Today I'm back for another bike review, this time from a bike from Juiced. They're a company in Southern California, and funny enough, their marketing company or agency, whatever it is, they actually reached out to me and asked if I would do a review on this specific bike. And of course, I said yes, as long as I can give the bike away once I'm done with it. Unfortunately, after that email, I didn't hear anything further, so I went ahead and bought one anyway. Let's go ahead and cut this box open, pull it out, and see what we've got. Double boxed, that's always a good sign. Everything seems pretty well protected in here and it looks safe. Let's see how hard it is to lift the bike out. Oh, I bet there's our charger. There is our front wheel. So instead of a spoked wheel, we've got the cool cast wheel. Looks great, but they are mighty heavy. It's true for any bike that comes with wheels like this. And now the part I'm most excited about is the color of the frame. Leave a comment below with a guess as to which color you think I bought. Red? No. Oh, that's heavy. First thing to do with any new electric bike is always to cut off about 1 million zip ties. That's interesting, it actually came with 3 keys instead of the usual 2. Remember, when you unbox any new bike, always the smart thing to do is to pop the battery off and charge it as soon as you get started. We're gonna take the keys and loosen this up. Let's see if we have a charger in the box here. We have a few tools. This looks like our axle for the front wheel, our pedals, more tools, another tool, a random set of spacers. I'm gonna assume those go for the front axle to put the front wheel on. And here, finally, should be our charger. This is a 52-volt battery. That's one of Juiced's marketing claims, is that they're one of a few that actually comes with a 52-volt instead of a 48. And it's a 2-amp charger. So not the fastest, but pretty standard for what comes with most bikes these days. And then it uses the 3-pin XLR connector. So in theory, as long as the BMS of the battery can handle it, should be easy to upgrade to a faster charger if you wanted to. Thankfully, I have an outlet right here. We've got a red light on our charger, so battery should be charging. It may not be full by the time we're done, but at least it has a little bit of a charge. That means that as soon as we're done putting this thing together, we can go take it for a test ride. So first thing to do is to put the handlebars on. We've got 4 bolts on the front of the stem. We've got 3 of those off. We're on to the last one. And very unique design here. There's getting to be more and more bikes like this, but it's kind of a reminiscent of those old Honda mini bikes. So really high-rise handlebars here, but the bike overall is fairly small. We may have to adjust the handlebars a little bit after we get that front wheel on, so I'm just gonna loosely put these back in. But at least if the handlebars are on, that's gonna make it easier to get that front wheel on there. Like I said, just have the handlebars loosely installed. That gives me something to hang on to so we can get the front wheel on. Once it's on its own 2 wheels, we'll adjust these a little bit to where it's comfortable. Now, I said, or I showed in the box I just pulled out, there were a few spacers for this front wheel. I should read the manual for once and see what they recommend the spacing is, because there's quite a few here. There we go, perfect. They do say which one goes where. That's helpful. So if you have one of these, just check your manual to see which spacer goes where on this axle. I don't know if I really like that design, but that's the way it's made. I got the spacers put on. I would say just maybe make that a little bit different. I'm not a huge fan of the fork design, but it is what it is. There's a little tab on the disc brakes. We're gonna pop that out. Now let's try and get that front wheel on there. There we go. And I'm assuming the nice big 3-way wrench is gonna have the right sizes for that. Not the 3-way wrench, the smaller wrench they include with the 15mm is what you want. The other one had the right size, but it didn't quite go on far enough. Okay, that is on there. Not a big fan of that, but it's functional, it's bolted on. I don't think it's going anywhere now. Oddly enough, both the tires are very low, hardly any air in them at all. So I'm gonna go grab a pump and we'll put some air in the tires. Then we can get this thing onto its own two wheels. We've got the air in the tires, it's on the kickstand. Let's go ahead and throw the pedals on and then we'll tighten up those handlebars. Don't forget, with any new bike, make sure to put your pedals on the right way. Right hand threads on the right side and left hand threads on the left side. Now this bike is using these metal Welgo pedals. These are pretty common on a lot of e-bikes these days. They're not terribly fancy, they're pretty inexpensive, so the bearings aren't always the greatest. You can see they don't spin at all, but they're durable. They've got decent grip, so it's pretty normal. I just checked online because I'll be honest, I was a little confused on the price of this bike. Right now they list it as $17.99. Sometimes they list it as a higher price, but with like huge discounts, like $500, $700. And just remember to take that with a grain of salt. They don't actually, I don't actually ever think I've ever seen it at those higher above $2,000 price ranges. Sometimes it seems like they bump the price up and then discount it, so they're selling at the regular price, they just want more people to buy it. At least that's my impression. Now that I can see how the bike sits, what it would be like to actually ride it, I can see where the handlebars would sit, and I'm gonna move these forward. I'm gonna say to about right there. That feels okay. And now we can tighten these 4 bolts all the way up. Now I've covered this in other videos, but since the battery's still on the charger, it's a good idea with a new bike, just double check your brakes, make sure they're working properly before you go for a ride. Double check the side bolts on the stem. I don't know if these are tight. They are tight, but they're not exactly straight, so we do need to loosen them and straighten that front wheel a little bit. In fact, they're very tight. It's a good idea just to check all the regular nuts and bolts so you don't have an unpleasant first ride if something comes loose. So we'll straighten these up. That seems a little bit better and happier. Now we'll tighten those back up. Now, what do I think about the bike having not ridden it at all? It's pretty cool looking. I went for the brushed aluminum frame and I just think that looks awesome. So that's why I chose that color. I might have to use that on a version of one of my bikes someday. I've always thought that was really cool, and I've wanted to even go further than a brushed and like totally polish an aluminum frame, but it's so much work to do that. I haven't done it, but it's kind of unique. Interestingly enough, it's not as small as I thought it would be. I've been on bikes like the Super 73 and the Rad Runner, and the seat sits really low, so it's very hard to pedal. But the standover on this thing, if you want to call it a standover, is actually really high because you kind of just swing your leg over and you get on it. So you can see I'm on my toes. I actually can't, I gotta really stretch, but I can't quite put my feet flat, which normally on another bike would be a bad thing if you couldn't stand over the bike. But this one, because you're sitting on the seat, I think that's okay. Because if I put the kickstand up here, it looks like if I scooted back far enough, I might actually be able to pedal this thing normally. And on the Rad Runner, that wasn't something that was so easy to do. The seat shape is totally different on this. I might actually be able to pedal this comfortably. It's definitely not like a normal bicycle seat. If you want something that you're really gonna pedal and get a lot of exercise with this really isn't the style of bike that I would recommend. But if you're just gonna pedal a little bit, mostly cruise around, then I think something like this is great. The suspension fork, now that I'm looking at down and see what's in front of me without the bike being on, it does have a lockout right here and a preload adjustment. So nothing super fancy, but a couple of adjustments there. We've got a headlight. We'll see how bright that is when we get the battery on. And we've got our display on the left, a grip shifter. Now we're starting to get into weird things because we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 speed Shimano tourney derailleur back here. And Shimano makes all sorts of different shifters, but a grip shifter for a rear derailleur always, and I'm not just making this up, it always goes on the right handlebar, not the left side. So your grip shifter should be here, but there is a half twist throttle. So instead of installing a different type of shifter, they've put a 7-speed shifter on the left-hand side and mounted it upside down. I find that very odd and strange. So if you look at it from my perspective where I'm seated on the bike, it says Revo Shift 7-speed, but the text is upside down and the numbers are all backwards. I think that's a little bit weird. There's so many great shifting options, so many different throttle options. They could have put something on the right side and either changed to a thumb throttle or a different twist throttle that has a lower profile so you could put trigger shifters. There's a bunch of options. Why did they put the shifter upside down? We can get past that. I just don't like, I guess I'm a little bit picky on things like that, and I would have changed it around. But that's where it is. So we have our throttle on the right, our grip shifter on the left, and then we have our buttons for the display, and they're within reach. So ergonomically, it works. It's just, it bugs me that it's upside down. Brakes, I'm gonna double check that because I have ridden some other brakes lately where they were reversed from the normal American standard. So these ones are done, in my opinion, correctly. The left brake goes to the front wheel, the right brake goes to the rear wheel. And we do have some decent hydraulic brakes from Tektro. Normally, you don't see hydraulic brakes on things that are under $2,000. I feel like you get to the $2,000 price point and up and they get to be more common. So good on them for putting some decent brakes. They do claim that the bike goes 28 miles an hour. And if that's true, we'll find out about that soon. Then good brakes is a must, especially when you have this much weight. And no, I'm not talking about me, but the bike, I hate to say it, but it's heavy. I said it when I lifted it out of the box. I'm talking about my first impressions out of the box. Literally, the first thing you do is lift it out of the box, and it felt heavy. I didn't weigh it, but I did check the specs on the website. It says that it's 78 pounds. That's this version with the cast wheels. This is one of the heavier e-bikes I've ever seen. The only, just for a comparison, as far as what bikes I have, if you start getting to something that's heavier, you have to go to my 26-inch fat tire, either 750 or 1000 watt Warthog bikes that have dual batteries, and they're just massive compared to this. To give you an example on the extreme end the other way, the Blackbird bikes that I have are also 750 watt Bafang motors, and they have bigger tires and wheels, and they are nearly 20 pounds lighter than this bike. So very strange. You can save some weight by going to the Camp Scrambler, which is their version with the off-road tire and the spoked wheels. If you're worried about weight, definitely go for that version because the wheels add several pounds. But even without that, both versions are well over 70 pounds, which is pretty hefty in my opinion for a bike like this. So a little bit odd to me. I think they definitely could have done something to make it lighter. But like any e-bike, when you're actually riding it using the power, most of that weight just disappears. So not gonna be a big deal while you're riding it, but if you need to lift this up onto a rack or anything, just bear in mind that it's one of the heavier e-bikes I've seen, especially for a 20-inch smaller, quote unquote, smaller bike. I know the battery's not fully charged, but let's go ahead and unplug it. Everything else is ready. Let's put it on the bike and take it for a little spin. There's a battery on switch right there. There's a power button right behind the display right here. and it's a very basic looking black and white display, but it does show the battery voltage, which is something that I like. So it's showing 55.8 volts. And the pedal assist settings are really interesting. There's 0, Eco, 1, 2, 3, Sport, and then Race. So instead of just a 0 through 5 like they normally have, you have race mode, sport mode, eco mode. So it's a little bit funny, maybe it might take a little getting used to instead of just the standard numbers. But hey, it makes it a little bit more fun, right? So now the only thing left to do is get on the bike, give it some throttle, and see how it performs. Here's my first chance to get on the bike and actually ride it. Handling wise, it's pretty fun. It just, you can cruise back and forth. It feels like the fun little mini bike I think that they designed it after. Now I was really hoping that based on the kind of unique seat design where it's not totally flat, and because of the seat height, it would be possible or easier to pedal. And you can pedal it. So here I am pedaling the bike, but is it comfortable? Not so much. I'm afraid that this style of seat just isn't quite right for comfort when you're pedaling. It's too wide. It's like trying to pedal when sitting on a couch. Bikes are just not made that way. Bike seats aren't made that way, and for good reason. So lots of fun to ride. For example, it's kind of zippy and it handles pretty well. So it's fun for sure. Just like I said, if you want a bike where you're gonna get lots of exercise and really pedal, then I would go for something a different style. Now that being said, because this bike has 2 battery options, because I would probably use the throttle more on something of this style, I'd probably go with the higher capacity battery that they sell and not the 13 amp hour that I've got here. Now, one of the reasons I bought this bike, I have to be honest, is because I have heard of a lot of complaints on the controller system, the way it interacts with the motor. And because this is a Bafang 750 watt rear hub motor and a 20-inch wheel, realistically, it could be enough power on the low end with that motor setup that a bike like this could literally pull wheelies from a start. Does this do this? No, not at all, not even close. It kind of takes off slowly, it eases the power on, which I think is good because too much power all at once makes a bike harder to ride, and it's not as much fun for beginners. And let's face it, most people buying an e-bike, they're buying an e-bike for the very first time. But I think performance-wise, if we tweak some things a little bit on this bike, we might be able to get more out of it. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the bike doesn't have enough power. Here we are going up a hill and I am pretending to pedal. I'm only very lightly pedaling and it's going up perfectly fine. So I don't think it'll have any trouble going up hills or anything. I think it's got enough. I think it could be a little bit zippier on the low end. And then the other thing I'm noticing is there's kind of this strange noise that it makes where it stutters a little bit. One of the complaints that I have heard was mainly about the top end speed and how the way the motor and controller is behaving, it's stuttering a little bit, so it's not maintaining a constant speed. Now I've test ridden a customer's bike before that had the problem. I have seen it. I haven't done a top speed test on this bike, so we're gonna find out if it does it. So we're going up a slight hill. Let's go ahead and test out the top speed thing that I'm talking about and see if we experience it. We'll turn it all the way up to race mode, throttle on. We're still shifting up through the gears. We're getting up to, oh yeah, that might have been the top speed cutoff, but definitely stuttered right there. We might be not quite getting to the top speed because we're going uphill, and I might have just hit the top speed and that kind of bumped it back down. So let's turn around and go down a slight slope and maybe we'll see what happens. Okay, let's get up to speed a little faster. So I'm going down a slight slope. We're doing about 24, 25 miles an hour, 26, 27. Now I know I'm not on a fully charged battery, but it's supposed to go 28 and I'm going downhill and I'm not quite getting there. I am not experiencing the slight stutter or hesitation, however. So that's a good sign. Now, I must admit, when I was taking off from a stop earlier and I said it wasn't the fastest, the torquiest thing, I did have it a lower setting. So I've stopped, I put it in race mode. Let's try that again. So I'm gonna show you the acceleration just from a stop right now. It goes, it has the power, but it really kind of, you can feel it throttling you back and not letting the motor really do its thing. It's hesitating and slowly putting the power on. That was, okay, we're right around 19 miles an hour. We're going up the hill and I feel the motor weird hesitation thing I'm talking about, where I'm doing 19.2, 3, 18. It's just kind of jumping around even though I'm going up a very steady incline. So it's almost like somebody is riding on the back of the bike and they're just squeezing the brake a little bit here and there, just randomly when you're not expecting it. And I think that's what most people are describing. You know, it's something you could live with, but it doesn't feel quite right. Now, because this is just a review on the stock bike, I'm not gonna make any changes to it yet, but I do have a controller kit already made for this bike, and I have a few of them on hand. So I am going to put one of these on there, do some testing, and do a separate video on that to see if it unleashes the power that I think this bike could have. So I was thinking maybe I was hitting the speed limit, but it was turned up to 40, so that wasn't it. I really was just experiencing the slight weird stutter that other people are describing. To summarize my thoughts on the Juiced City Scrambler, it's pretty heavy for an e-bike. It is a lot of fun though. If I was a teenager or somebody and I just wanted to zip around the neighborhood, this would be awesome. If I want to actually go out and get some exercise, then I would probably look at something different. I do think for what it is, it's priced very reasonably. It's got decent components. I will say that I have heard, and I haven't experienced this myself, that the customer service can be a little hit or miss. If the bike shows up and it's in great working condition, then everybody seems to be happy. If they have a problem getting parts or service, it has had mixed reviews. But personally, I think it's cool. I wouldn't mind having something like this just to zip around the shop, go down the street, but for hitting the trails and exercise, it wouldn't be my go-to bike for that sort of thing. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit like if you enjoyed my short little review of this bike. There is more to come because in the next video that I do about this bike, I'm gonna install an upgrade kit on it, see if it fixes or adjusts some of the quirks that the bike has, and hopefully makes it a lot faster than what it is now.